Welcome to Resilient Science, the show where we spend 10 to 15 to however many minutes each week trying to better understand a topic around hockey, rehab, and the science behind it. I'm Dr. Ben Sonick. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I'm a strength and goalie coach. I'm a researcher graduate student that gets to research hockey, and I spend way too much time looking at goalies getting drafted. Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm Jamie, doing well. My research is still in the IRB pipeline because the head of the IRB at our school left. So there's a chance that our research just gets thrown out, which I'm
Jamie
very
doesn't
upset about.
research.
I do have a new publication coming soon. I will drop that eventually. Um, anyways, yeah, former pro goalie, doctor, physical therapy student, master of science, strength coach. I run a remote training program for goalies called the Elite Goalie Method. It's very successful. You should join. Very shameless plug. But anyways,
Wow.
you had a good, yeah, sponsored. Today's episode is sponsored
Today's
by the
episode is
Elite Goalie
sponsored
Method.
by Jamie's own work. And let's keep in mind that Jamie gets to advertise on here and gives me a 0% cut. So I
Zero.
join the Elite Goalie Method if you want, but you don't have to because Jamie
But
doesn't
to
pay
be
me.
fair, in order to payment, I do listen to a lot of your rants about just like draft. You're like, hey, did you know that in the '06 draft, if you were drafted past the fifth round, they had a 2.7? It's just like, yes, Ben.
Did you know, Jamie, that if you start looking at goalies drafted by round, one of the most successful NHL draft rounds of all time is the ninth? Did you know that, Jamie?
I didn't. Although
Do you know?
I am looking forward to when you do your data and then we put together like a really long video where we sit down and just talk about it because there's going to be so many people who are like, well, there's always going to be like, you're wrong, even though it's not like you're giving your opinion. It's just like, hey, these are what the numbers say. Uh, hopefully, and again, it builds upon our discussion and the evidence that you provided that Hockey Canada is not broken, and also the current scouting model, not development model, but scouting model we have to identify talent actually works way better than I thought off
Yeah,
like top of my head. So
it's pretty good. But yeah, different topic this week. Jamie, this week I
yes,
wanted to talk to you about actually a on ice specific topic, which is what we think the most difficult plays or reads, so situations that goalies find themselves in games that are regularly occurring. And so like we wanted to define what regularly occurring means. So we didn't want to say like 2-on-0s and 3-on-0s. Yes, those are hard. You don't really regularly see those though. So if you do, we're sorry. It happens
yeah.
sometimes, I
So I
guess.
know someone's gonna comment being like,
I get
"Oh
five a
my,
game.
yeah, my team isn't good, so I get six 3-on-0s a game." Like that's not. It shouldn't happen. So we're sorry. We're sorry to hear that.
Yeah, like it sucks. Keep grinding. You got this. But we're gonna talk about stuff that is more commonly occurring. And so we each kind of have a top three. We went into it not talking to each other about it, but ended up kind of at the same place.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, without further ado, let's go from the simplest ones to the most complicated ones. So you hit us with what you think is the simplest of the three we talked about.
Yeah, this is actually crazy now that I think about simplest. Dang. I don't know if the high screen, high tip is more simple than just any sort of 5-on-3, based on the fact that in a high screen, high tip, there's so much out of your control.
Correct,
Where
which is
it
why
is,
it's hard. Yeah.
which is like why it then becomes a percentage and luck game versus a 5-on-3 where you do have the opportunity to pre-scout, but then it becomes a numbers game where eventually you you're going to expose a lot of net at some point. And so for me, in no particular order, so I'm completely ruining your question, Ben. High screen, high tip. So anything with a flash screen, flash tip, where it's very difficult to read the release, or you read the release and it changes direction and it has to go through bodies, which is why in the NHL you see so many tip goals because that's basically the only way to beat goalies consistently these days.
Mhm.
5-on-3, again, numbers game. You don't know. There's a lot of different ways that other teams will set up a 5-on-3 power play. Um, so any of those are just difficult, common occurring. You'll see one every couple of games at least. And then I'll give you your top two because we agreed on the most difficult, common, like
Yes.
and very common. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the one thing that's probably so again, yeah, I agree. I think simple is a tricky word, but yeah, like in terms of a flash screen or a multi-layered screen with a tip, you're right. As a goalie, you're just try and find a release, trying to
Mm,
find any sightline of a puck, and generally try to stay squared on your angle to it and kind of hope it hits you. Like
yeah.
beyond, is there anything beyond that? Like sometimes I know that
Not
historically we talk about
no.
getting close to a tip, right? Like you want to try to limit how variable that tip can be, but that
Except,
also, yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, so you would like to get closer. This is a key thing. You don't want to get close. You need to this is a big thing that I talk about with all my goalies and like anyone that follows like BC on Patreon. I just hammer this home. You need to have separation between the guy in front and you because you cannot sacrifice your positioning in terms of like your say your arm or stick getting caught up in the player, your player or the offensive player in front of you. So, but when a tip is closer, the tip is close, meaning like a couple feet from the top of the blue, you want to be closer to the shooter. When the tip is high, there is nothing you cannot get closer to him.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that is why high tips are so effective. And so for simplicity's sake, when Ben gave me this list and we were talking about it before the show, high tips and high screens have the least number of variables. And so that's why I would consider it the most simple. It is not simple to save, but in terms of variables and options, a shot will either get tipped or it won't. So you have two variables there. That tip will either go high, mid, so high glove, high blocker, low glove, low blocker, chest. So five variables there. So it's very so that's really it. The screen is what it is. You either see the release or you don't see the release. So that's like a 1 and a 0. So there's the fewest amount of variables there. 5-on-3, you don't know what's happening because you also add in screens and tips to a 5-on-3 with two extra players on the advantage. But that's a big important thing. Sorry, I got to try. Yeah, when you the thought that you need to get super close and super tight with a tip is old. Don't
Yes.
play like that. You don't want to be backed up in your crease in your goal line, obviously, but you need to have enough separation where it doesn't interfere with your save execution. And if a tip is tight, yes, you can eliminate much of the angle by being closer. But as soon as that tip goes higher than like the hash marks or even a couple
Not
feet below
even,
the hash
yeah.
marks,
Yeah.
it does not matter your depth.
I really like how your 4 minute rant there immediately came after I said but to clarify my point. So thank you for letting
Yeah,
me
so
just
I'm just
say
taking all the credit.
thank you for not
Well,
letting me
no,
say
it's hard. I mean, we work with a lot. I don't know how many new goalies you get a week. I get a lot of new goalies each week that that join my program, and so for me, a lot of it is teaching the same concepts over and over again. Like once you have the same goalies, they know that they create separation. But whenever like I have a new goalie at least once a week, um, I'll ask that question and they say I gotta get really close,
yeah.
and then it's just the same thing. So it's just one of those things that's been fresh on the top of my mind because I continuously talk about it.
Yeah, and if people want like a reference point on this, go check out Jordan Binnington, how he plays in traffic. He is very engaged with players in front of him. And I think that's one of his biggest troubles is when he engages with players, like
It,
physically engages with them and depth wise too. Anyways, moving on. So yeah, screens tips very hard, but relatively simple in the grand scheme of what happens on those. So that's our number one. That's a difficult, commonly occurring play. Number two, Jamie alluded to it and straight up mentioned it, 5-on-3s. But 5-on-3s are tricky for a lot of different ways. And I think one thing to keep in mind is 5-on-3s become more and more complicated the older you get and the higher level you play at.
mhm.
Because one of the things that we hear a lot too is that, oh, 5-on-3s aren't so bad. I just make backdoor saves back and forth. And it's like, yeah, that's fair. That will happen. But as you get older and as the play gets faster, more teams will start closing in that zone. So you'll start to see, for example, like the D will start pinching down to the top of the circles if you're running an effective 5-on-3 more or less at a higher level.
Yeah,
If you're playing in a league where the other team does not close the size of the offensive zone on the 5-on-3, uh, this situation gets less scary. Jamie, agree, disagree?
yeah, and teams are getting more creative. One of those 5-on-3s that I started to see more towards the end of my career, and then you see it a little more in college and junior, not much in the NHL, is the two players behind the goal line, three above, and it's the pass behind and like get the goalie to open up and just to set up a one timer from the slot where the guy skates in. That is very hard.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
hard.
Well, anytime you go low to high, that's a
Yeah.
really difficult play. And then if you add a cross seam, like now you're really opening up a really big challenge. Jamie, general suggestions that you think are really important things to consider on a 5-on-3 that goalies can take away from it to make a difficult situation maybe a little easier for them. Some common mistakes that you see on 5-on-3s.
Yeah. The everyone wants that one hack that's going to change everything. Most important thing is manage your depth. Manage your depth.
Agreed.
There in a 5-on-3, there is no reason for you to be at the top of the crease. You want to be
And
mid crease because of the backdoor options. You need to give yourself a chance to the backdoor. You need to eliminate a large majority of the net in your in the save, and you do that by being in the mid crease, diminishing returns as you move forward, as we talked about before. So depth and patience are your two biggest assets because the purpose of a 5-on-3 is to get you behind the play and open up your net, or get you to drop, which causes you to be behind the play.
yeah, I like that you immediately took it to the one simple hack. I wasn't asking for a simple hack. I was asking for
No, but
things that you should do.
everyone wants that one thing that's going to change. It's just depth. Just manage your depth. It's not fancy. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh yeah, like you can do that. No, anyone that says that just drives me nuts because so many, what is it, superlatives.
Uh, all is, I don't think you're using that word correctly
I
at
don't think
all.
I am either.
No, but I think that's yeah, I agree with that. I think you can almost really see goals happening on 5-on-3s at junior levels, at minor hockey levels. As soon as you see a goalie like hit white ice, basically, you're like, oh, okay, that's going to cross a seam and that's going to go in the net now. Or even, and I think this is underappreciated, you get really aggressive only to make a rebound save that you have a 0% chance of ever getting back to, right? So
Yeah. So it's like, exactly. You can make that save, the initial save, by not being super aggressive, and then have a chance to make that backdoor save. May not make it,
yep,
at least have a chance. Also, superlative was correct because
nice, good job.
everyone wants that one greatest hack to solve your 5-on-3 problems. Anyways, so we've talked about not the
We've
hardest
got high
situation
screen, high
long
tip.
enough. Yeah, so we've talked high screen high tip, 5-on-3. Then we agree on, we usually agree on everything. Otherwise we don't have a podcast. The most common occurring difficult play, and this is, everyone's gonna love this one. It is a low angle or goal line attack with a backdoor pass option.
Oh, this gives me absolute chills thinking about being in the net for this play.
I know. So Ben, I will give you the honor this time of talking about it because you identified this before I did.
Yeah, so I think that I always say to anyone, so if any of the goalies that I work with are listening to this, you've heard me say this a lot of times that I think this is the hardest commonly occurring play in hockey right now. Only because one, players are getting smarter. Congratulations to players. We're very happy for you. But also because it just happens so often and it is unappreciated how often it happens.
Yeah.
So for example, like I think that's one of the biggest things is everyone loves, and we talked about this before, but everyone loves to watch an RVH fail. And then everyone gets on Twitter and everyone's a goalie coach about how to deal with that play. But I think one thing people fail to appreciate is just how often nothing comes from a net drive attack. And I mean, no shot, no pass, and just a regroup happens, or they go around the net, or it's a simple
Yeah.
save. Like that happens a ton. So I think why this play is so tricky is because one, it's very fast paced.
Mhm.
So you have to make a decision really quickly. So you have to be aware, you have to have a really good scan. Like, is there someone in the slot? Is there someone behind you? Is there someone, where are they? If there is someone on the other side of the ice, because that immediately dictates what your save options are, right? And
Mhm.
realistically, I think if we're going to keep it pretty simple, it's RVH overlap. Is there anything else people are using, Jamie? You want to throw it? I saw a VH the other day, actually. I saw
Uh,
VH.
VH will be common on the glove side, not as much block side.
Correct. Yeah. Because at least you can stack the glove side. But those are
And
really
then
your,
if,
sorry,
to be honest, if you say panda on this, like this, sure.
not today.
Let's just say you did an overlap and you're cheating, a cheating overlap.
You
But
didn't
yes, some,
overlap and you pivoted.
my
Um,
European goalies will say panda.
that's fine. I'm just going to group that largely into an overlap category. So you really don't have that
Yeah.
many options as a goalie, which is why this play also becomes scary because in a lot of ways, Jamie, you're stuck waiting for this attack,
Yeah.
right? You don't, it's one of the few plays where you really are just like, okay, here they come, here
Hmm.
they come.
Yeah,
And you
and
have to
that's
kind of
true.
make that decision, right? Because it's especially for some goalies, when you have that really lateral backdoor threat, it's not wrong to be in an RVH here. Like it isn't.
No,
It's
it isn't. You
you
sh
should be.
you should be. Again, the purpose of the RVH is to seal the short side. That
Okay.
is it. That is it. Everyone wants to give this convoluted answer where you're shielding the short side and playing the back door and setting yourself. No, it's to seal the short side and to give yourself a decent anchor so that if the guy runs into you, you don't come off the net. Whereas like in an overlap, you can easily get pushed off the net in a battle. Um, or if you want to use your edge, you have to sacrifice a little bit of the your 5 hole,
Yeah,
and you
your
can't have
coverage,
that.
right? Like you lose
Yeah.
coverage. Yeah. I think that is something really important. And I hammer this home all the time that the goal of any short side net drive play is to make the short side safe. That is
Mm-hmm.
the number one priority. If a puck is getting through back door, you have a chance, right? You're in positionally, ideally, a situation where you can make that save. But it's not, again, that's not the priority of the RBH. The priority
Yeah,
of the RBH is to seal the short side, which is why I think you get upset a lot when goalies are doing it in a non-shot situation, basically. Because like, why are you in a short side save position when there's not a shot happening?
I know. And this would be a good like I would love some I do talk about sometimes on like my teaching posts for my goalies because it requires a lot of detail and video explanation.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially why for me why this is such a difficult play is because the ice gets split because that low drive attack is 100% the goalie's responsibility. And I
Mm-hmm.
know everyone gets upset when we say things like, oh, the goalie is your job. The low attack is your responsibility because the amount of net available to score is so small that just, it has to be your job. There's no one else going to influence it. And so for me, protecting the short side is priority number one for the goalie. Then priority number two is being able to have the ability to make the read and have an athletic ability to push across for that save. Um, and so this happens all the time. And why? And so that is challenging to have the ice split. So essentially, you have to commit 100% to a shot and then be able to abandon that commitment to be able to push across and make a save. And shooters understand this, and that's why it's so difficult to make the save. And then when you look at post plays and why all of the RVH fails and everyone just goes, "Oh, you shoulda, coulda, woulda." Well, yeah, everyone says that in hindsight. But the reason that the post plays are so highly debated is because of either improper timing, we're going into something too early. Usually it's too early. Rarely is it too late. And then the second is save selection. So it's picking the wrong save. So either picking an overlap or an RVH in the wrong situation. So using an RVH in an overlap situation or using an overlap in an RVH situation. And that's really when it distills down to. So as a goalie, if you can learn from your coaches and from watching the NHL and be able to identify what situation should I use an overlap, what situation should I use an RVH, and when should I use it, you're going to reduce the number of goals that you give up straight shots on the short side by like a lot.
A significant amount. Yeah, and this is where I'll throw out like everyone loves to talk about UC Saros, us included, but he actually is one of the better users of overlaps regularly.
Mm-hmm.
He does a really good job.
He
And
does.
he so like again, if you're looking to see at someone like how if you want to see someone how they read these kind of lower angle or drive plays, that's not a bad place to start. You can
Mm-hmm.
pretty much watch any game Nashville plays because Nashville gives a ton of just a ton of chances, period.
So many chances.
So many chances. So you're able to kind of see him do it a bunch of games. So just watch a couple Nashville games if you want a starting place on, and then just really look at how those low net drives are being played. But I think, Jamie, to kind of go back to what you were saying a second ago there, I think one of the issues, and we see quote unquote with RVH fails, is still just going to an RVH timing is like okay, and then some goalies get into a very low RVH, and I know some people teach a very like low shoulder forward RVH. Um, why do they do that?
I don't know. I don't know why. I so let's
Do you
just
know what I'm
say
talking about though? Like,
for
like the
simplicity's
low
sake,
RVH?
simplicity's sake, we'll differentiate between a paddle down RVH and a blocker on the pad. Paddle down being a low in this definition because your shoulder's getting pulled forward. Blocker on the pad where you can sit higher. So those are going to be the way we differentiate them. So for those listening at home, it's easy to explain. So there is a purpose to a paddle down RVH, just like there's a purpose to a blocker on pad RVH. It all depends on the situation. So again, simplicity's sake, what I use, what Bouge taught me, what I use in my goalies is if that puck is within 3/4 of a stick length away from you, or it's a wraparound, paddle down RVH is the play because that puck is so tight, it's almost impossible for it to be able to get elevated above your shoulder. As soon as that puck is outside that 3/4 of a stick length, so the length of your stick, 75% of it, that if you are coming forward in a paddle down that situation, you are becoming vulnerable above your shoulders. And so the smaller you are, the larger this is going to be, that area is going to be. And so I don't know why goalies will do the paddle down RVH when the puck is like at the corner on the goal line. I know that you say you want to block the pass. The puck's out there. Well, one, you maybe should be on your feet, but anything through your crease is your responsibility to block that pass, and you can usually do that with or without a paddle down. So I don't know why it's being taught to do the paddle down RVH on shots like that. It doesn't make sense. So for me, again, differentiating and making my goalies smarter and understanding and reading the situation, not just being automatic. As soon as you enter the RVH, I have to do a paddle down RVH. Well, your paddle is not covering anything. Your pad is there, and it's also pulling you off the net. So it's eliminating the reason that you even are in the RVH, which is to seal the short side.
Oh man, the REH rabbit hole. But yeah, to kind of circle all that back, like
it's
this,
not even a rabbit hole because it's actually
it's not that
not complicated.
complicated. Yeah.
Because like sometimes, yes, sometimes you're gonna do everything right and still get beat. And that's
Yeah.
okay. But in terms of which read to which situation, it's honestly truly, and this isn't like me saying like, oh, Ben and I are the RVH gods. It's really, really not that complicated. Where the problem lies is some goalie coaches and some goalies have an like a belief where it is automatic, whereas every situation requires the same save selection, and it really doesn't. The way you use the RVH or the overlap changes depending on the situation, and that is part of being a goalie, and that's what we teach and emphasize is to be smarter in your reads and be able to identify, and that comes with experience and practice. And so like it's not going to happen overnight, but that's why it's honestly truly not that complicated on the surface. It's hard to learn and it takes time, but the principles are not complicated.
Yeah, that's such a really nice summary. I had to use an RVH a lot because I was a bad skater. So, anyways, that's a separate issue. But to kind of tie that all in, I think the one thing that's kind of links all these situations together and also differentiates them is the level of control and the level of decision making you have to make. And that's really what makes situations and games difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
To go back to that screen tip kind of situation, like that play becomes really hard because you can do everything right on it and still get scored on regularly, right? It just because
Mm-hmm.
there's so much moving there. You can be really happy with how you played something and it changes direction on you off a release you couldn't really see because there was four people in front. That's life. That's goaltending,
Yeah.
right? Well, what's really important about these situations and is looking at how you are playing them and if there is a pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like on 5-on-3s, if you're constantly getting beat back door, don't just look at that like, well, it's a 5-on-3. Yes, it is. The chances of the goals going in definitely increases. Like we're not here to dispute that. Um, but just know what you could be adjusting and how you could play that differently. And that applies again to those low net drives, right? If you're finding yourself getting beat often, or if you're finding yourself not feeling comfortable about them, take a little bit look why, right? Like, yes, these plays are hard, but that doesn't mean there isn't reasons at which you can make those easier. Right,
Yeah.
Jeremy?
And yeah, I agree with everything you said, and you hit all the points I wanted to make. So the only additional point is when you are self-evaluating, if you don't have a goalie coach, or say your goalie coach isn't giving you like great answers, um, you I don't know how to say this. if you're having trouble coaching yourself, it is very important to reach out to a goalie coach and ask for help. And I know some people aren't going to like this, but it typically means making a commitment to work with that goalie coach, whether it's remotely or in person, for a period of time. Because if someone texts me or DMs me and says I'm getting beat in post plays, that doesn't tell me anything. If someone shows me one clip of them getting beat once on a post play, that doesn't mean anything. For me to actually do my job as best as I can and help that goalie, I need to see a lot of post plays, and I need to, work with them on multiple occasions. So I know everyone, like, we get it, like investing in yourself. Sometimes it isn't fun, and sometimes you get um it actually is always fun, but sometimes people are apprehensive to that investment. But I can assure you that investing in yourself and your game is always going to be the best thing, because you can solve those problems. And so that's what my biggest thing is. Like, if you cannot figure out why you're getting beaten something, reach out and work with a goalie coach who's going to help you do that. Otherwise, you're just going to spend your time spinning your wheels and never getting your question answered.
Yeah, I agree with that. Use code PAYBEN for 15% off with Jamie's Elite Gold Method. But as we wrap up here, as always, if you have any questions, always reach out to us. We do our best to try and get back to everyone. And if you're on a podcasting service or YouTube, doesn't hurt to toss us a like or a rating. We always appreciate everyone doing that. Jamie, my final thought for the week is, well, it's a question. For goalies born since 1984, okay, 1984, birth years and younger. What undrafted goalie has played the most games in the NHL?
Can you give me a hint? Did he go major, junior, or college?
He is not from North America.
Oh, jeez. Pecorine?
No, Pecorine, eighth round draft pick.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry. Ah, damn, that's a bad answer.
Because you know the
Um,
story of Pecorine being
I know, I
drafted after
know, I
being
know, I
seen in a
know.
warm-up. Come on.
I know that's a bad answer. I panicked. Um,
I don't think you're gonna get it. I couldn't believe this guy wasn't drafted.
Anton Khudobin.
Ooh, good answer. Anton Khudobin, seventh round draft pick.
Ah, dang.
Um, like I said,
I don't know.
I'm the draft wizard now. It is
You
the Lord of the RVH himself. Topical for the week. It is Sergei Bobrovsky, 660 NHL games, undrafted.
what?
Yeah, didn't know that one, did you?
No, so he went from KHL straight to the show or straight to the American League?
I'm pulling it up because I couldn't believe it when I grabbed it myself.
Oh,
But
that actually I am very shocked that no one was able to um identify that when he
so
was 18.
let's do this. So he would have been 18 in 2000 and okay, his draft year was 2007 because he was born in September of 1988. In
Hmm.
2007, Jamie, I often say it is very hard to get drafted in the NHL out of the third Russian league. But because I know you're interested and this is something that I'm working on with some analysis, yada yada yada. When goalies are successful out of strange leagues, that influences later round picks in subsequent years once that goalie enters the NHL. Fun fact. So Bobrovsky plays in the Russia 3 for a few years, enters the NHL in 2010, where he immediately has a pretty solid impact. Want to know who starts getting picked up between 2011 and 2014? Goalies out of the
Goalies
Russia
in
3.
Russian third league. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
So,
makes sense.
anyways, Sergei Bobrovsky, the $10 million man himself, undrafted, and has currently played, drumroll, 622 NHL games. Well,
Wow, that's a lot of NHL games.
yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah, that includes playoffs. It's actually 673 if you include playoffs.
That is a lot of games. Wow,
Mhm.
that is a cool fun fact. I never would have guessed that Borowski was not drafted.
Well, there you go, Jamie. All right, man. As
Cool.
always, have a great day.
Too. Thanks for
We'll
listening,
see,
everyone.
see you next time.